on gender-based violence. We are very excited this evening because there's never enough time for us to share on the role and the importance of why we say no to violence in our country. We have seen an increase in the numbers of gender-based violence as a result of the pandemic. We have seen numbers of persons reporting the experience of gender-based violence. And so through the education, awareness campaigns, such as tonight, we are able to educate and expose and help our community understand why we say no to violence in all its forms. The realities of gender-based violence. Did you know that gender-based violence is a kills our men, women, and children? Did you know that gender-based violence destroys our families and our social fabric? Did you know that when we have broken homes, we have broken families and we have broken communities? And so, as per the task force, the study showed that unchecked gender-based violence not only escalates, but manifests itself in so many different ways. Children who are abused become desensitized to violence and are more likely to carry weapons to school or social events. Violence within the family, particularly against women and children, has been an open secret in the Bahamas for many years. Our crime problem will not be solved if we do not solve the problem of gender-based violence. And so this evening, I am very honored and pleased to talk about why we are here by introducing the persons who have collaborated and worked together to build this partnership. Our first presenter this evening who will bring remarks is someone who we are all proud of in our country. Dr. Rodney Smith, the president of UB, the University of the Bahamas. My boss is a transformational leader who inspires, engages, encourages, and works through all forms throughout our community, national or at the international level, through collaboration and partnerships. It is my pleasure to present to all of us the president of the University of the Bahamas, the premier tertiary institution in our country, Dr. Rodney Smith. Let's welcome him with his remarks this evening. Dr. Smith.
Good evening to everyone. I see some familiar faces and I'd like to say a very special hello and a happy new year to everyone. I am pleased to announce that the University of the Bahamas has partnered with the Bahamas Crisis Center and Rotarians. This partnership aims to raise awareness of gender-based violence among students and within the community. With tonight's launch of UB Says No to Gender-Based Violence. The committee has organized several Zoom events in support of the campaign. I encourage you to register and attend as many presentations as you possibly can. The university also supports the White Ribbon Campaign, which places focus on men's roles in ending gender-based violence. Earlier today, along with Rotary International and the Crisis Center, I participated in the White Ribbon tying ceremony at the front entrance of the university. The ribbon is a tangible and public reminder that there is a strong cadre of community supporters who are opposed to gender-based violence of all kinds. At its core, gender-based violence is known to be the most dehumanizing form of oppression. Studies suggest that gender-based violence exists in every country. Its tentacles affect the rich and the poor in every society and in all religions. The issue is one of great importance that requires constant conversation and education so that preventative measures can be implemented to protect victims, punish and persecute the perpetrators, and provide adequate therapy for all grieving survivors. Dr. Sandra Dean Patterson, director at the Bahamas Crisis Center, and her team have been on the front line as ambassadors and warriors in this fight for many, many years. They require influential allies like the university to help them educate and advocate to ensure that laws and regulations are passed to punish the guilty and eradicate gender-based violence in the Bahamas. The involvement of this university is also critical because we reach so many young people in the classroom, actual and virtual, as well as face-to-face on campus. I hope that with the involvement of the faculty and staff, and with alumni participation, we will be able to make a positive difference in the lives of our students. It is my pleasure now to introduce Dr. Sandra Dean Patterson, a distinguished psychologist and human rights activist. Dr. Dean Patterson established the Bahamas Council for the Disabled in 1973, founded the Bahamas Crisis Center, formerly the Women's Crisis Center, in 1982, established the Bahamas Association of Social Workers, and founded the Caribbean Association of Rehabilitative Therapists. For her advocacy on human rights in the Bahamas, Dr. Dean Patterson was awarded the Bahamas Order of Merit in 1997, the United States State Department's International Women of Courage Award in 2011, and the Bahamian Icon Award for Humanitarianism in 2014. I now invite Dr. Dean Patterson to bring remarks.
Thank you very much, President. And let me say how grateful I am to you for your support and encouragement in us launching this campaign and this partnership with UB. I salute you, sir, and I am truly grateful for your support. I bring tonight greetings from the Crisis Center and the hardworking, dedicated, committed volunteers without whom we would not be able to do all that we do. Tonight is a historic one. It's a historic one in the sense that we are partnering with the premier educational institution, tertiary educational institution in the Bahamas, but also because we begin our 40th year of work in the vineyard, work to support and treat and advocate for victims of gender-based violence, domestic and sexual violence. And for us to start it with this launch for our 40th year, we are so happy and so delighted. You know, we are fighting a pandemic of COVID, but we must not forget in our fight with the COVID pandemic that we have been fighting a global pandemic of gender-based violence, and it is penetrating our country in a very serious way. I think the recent incidents that were reported over the last couple of weeks with the death of the 5-year-old and the video of the woman and her child in the street and the reports in the newspaper of physical violence all shine a very sharp and bright light on this issue and emphasize why we have to continue the battle, continue the fight, and we're so happy to be able to do it along with the university. So we have planned very full, almost a blitz of activities. We have a film which we will be showing on the 17th of February that we hope everybody will watch. It's a Bahamian-made film on gender-based violence, just 20 minutes, and gives you a very critical and insightful look at the problem in our country. And then in March, we have a series of presentations on the different aspects of gender-based violence, from consent in sexual assault, choking and femicide, the gender stereotypes and belief systems that underpin the violence, and of course, healthy relationships and unhealthy relationships. And we'll be looking at the issue of child sexual abuse and incest. And we'll bring all of these in Zoom meetings, because unfortunately we're not able to meet face to face. And we will have these Zoom meetings spread throughout the next 2 months. So I'm hoping that the students will come out and participate virtually. We hope also to have some focus groups that will give us some more qualitative information about persons' belief systems and attitudes. And again, they will be happening throughout the month of March. We climaxed in April with well, 2 events actually. One, a silent witness exhibition in the Mullet Marathon, and then throughout we're going to have a TikTok competition where we're hoping that the UB, and it's only open to UB students, with very excellent prizes for the winners, cash and an iPad and phone. But we're hoping that they will depict messages that we could then use on the television and social media to enhance people's understanding of gender-based violence, understand the signs and symptoms, and know what you should do if you find yourself in those circumstances. So we have a very exciting and full calendar of events, and we are truly hoping that the students at UB will take advantage of this. One of the main outcomes that we hope at the very end of it will be, we hope, a cadre or a group of university students who will be the warriors, the gender-based violence warriors, who will be the disruptors of gender-based violence, so that we can have a new generation coming up with voices and action, because awareness is only the first part of this. Action has to come as a result of the awareness that we raise. So we look forward to a very exciting semester. And again, Dr. Smith, please accept my gratitude for this opportunity for us to reach your students. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patterson. You're truly an advocate and a champion for so many years in the work that you do. And so for all of us who are on this call, let us send some hearts of love and gratitude to Dr. Patterson, and some hearts to the president of the University of the Bahamas for such a collaborative effort this evening as we go forward to talk about why we are not supporting or encouraging gender-based violence. Let's salute our president, Dr. Rodney Smith, and Dr. Sandra Dane Patterson. Let us just let's get some action in here going this evening. Come on, let's show gratitude, because this work is very gravitous and it is so much to do. So let us continue to be grateful for the work that is happening and will continue to happen. And the University of the Bahamas will play a pivotal role in its educational programs and activities. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Patterson, and of course, President Smith, for your introductory remarks and updates. Thank you so much. And now, do you have your seatbelts on? Are you ready for the big show event tonight? Are you ready? If you're ready, send some hearts up, send some emojis up. Let's get some excitement going in this room, because this evening, we would have had 2 powerful speakers, but due to unforeseen circumstances, we will now have our one and only Dr. Robin Roberts, who is going to lead this charge and make this event such a significant one. Are you ready to receive Dr. Roberts?
Yay, Dr. Roberts.
I can't hear you. And Dr. Roberts needs very little introduction. But for those who are just joining us, I'm also very privileged and honored to introduce this very strong Bahamian man who is qualified, capable, who have led the way as an advocate, as an educator, and one who is constantly working on changing the mindset of our population. And Dr. Robin Roberts, like I said earlier, participated, he really led the, co-led the task force on the gender-based violence that was initiated by the government of the Bahamas. And he is still working that through, and we're still working through on that and looking forward to the implementation. But we also salute you, Dr. Roberts, for the great work that you do and continuously do, and never say no whenever we call you. And so this handsome Bahamian young man is a high school graduate of the old government high school. His tertiary education includes medical degree from the University of the West Indies, urological specialty training at Dalhousie University in Canada, and an MBA from the University of Miami. He has been in medical practice for over 40 years, wow, with 35 of them as a consultant surgeon at the PMH. It must be on the water that you're drinking. It must be in the water that you're drinking. You're still looking so young. He is well recognized in the community and at the national, regional, and international levels for his contributions and service in healthcare. The government of the Bahamas recognized this too, posting him on the Queen's New Year's honor list in 2017, awarding him an OBE, Order of the British Empire. He is currently senior lecturer and the director of the University of the West Indies School of Clinical Medicine and Research in the Bahamas, and chairman of the board of the National Health Insurance Authority. He is married to an Andrews gal, Carolyn Roberts, a clinical psychologist. They have 2 children and 4 grandchildren. His primary interest, work, and passion is bettering the health of men in the Bahamas, physically, mentally, socially, and sexually. Bahamas, the world, I present to you with much honor and distinction, a gentleman that we should all be proud of, who is always making waves and transforming lives throughout this country, Dr. Robin Roberts. Once his presentation is completed, we will then have questions and answers. So if you have questions throughout the presentation, please put them in the chat. We will acknowledge them, and he will answer those questions at the end of his presentation. Let's send some claps, some emojis, some love, and some heart to our Bahamian leader in medical professionals, Dr. Robin Roberts.
Hi. Good evening. Thank you very much. I was trying to find and look at this person you're talking about. Certainly isn't me. Good night, Dr. Smith. Good to see you again.
Yes, thank
Hello,
you.
Sandra. Yes, really.
Good to have
always,
you. Good to have you.
Great. I never miss an opportunity to have to spend some time at the University of the Bahamas. When I was ready for university, the University of the Bahamas was just a thought. And so I'm very happy to participate in any way I can in order to one day see it as one of the premier institutions in this region. And I certainly believe that it's going to happen. It's well on its way. But tonight, I'm charged to talk about gender-based violence. You all know that gender-based violence is a global challenge of great concern. How you perceive it and how it affects you depends on the lens that you're looking through to see it. Let me share with you my perspective of gender-based violence through my lens, the lens of a physician, a male physician specialist, a Bahamian male, homebred, raised in a single parent household by my mother. Now, myself, a parent of a son and a daughter, and one who considers himself a concerned citizen and a man of the world. So let me bring up my slide. I hope I can share can you share my screen for me, please? Can I have a screen share?
Certainly, just a second. Okay, you can proceed.
Oh, great. All right. Wow. Let me see why that doesn't come up here. Okay.
As we're waiting, we just want to,
Can you see my
Yeah.
screen now?
no, we cannot.
No, okay, well,
No, we're not
Nothing
seeing it yet.
okay, hold on.
I just want to say for the audience that our presentation will be for 25 minutes, and then we would have question and answer. So please listen, get all your questions. If you want them answered, this is the forum to get them answered. The experts are here. Come on, Doc. Ready?
Okay, I'm just trying to, okay. Here we are.
Perfect. We can
can
see
see
it
it now?
now. Yes, sir.
Great, so that's my lens. And it's pretty clear as to what I believe in gender-based violence. And so here's where we're gonna start. I'm charged today to talk about understanding gender-based violence. The what, the who, the where, the when, the why, and the how. So we're gonna first define gender-based violence, what it's about and what it's not. I want us to put a face on it. I want us to appreciate its impact on society. And we talk a little bit about why gender-based violence occurs. What's its pathogenesis? And then as time goes on, I'm pretty certain over the course of time, over the next several weeks, as Sandra indicated, hopefully that we will come to some solutions of how we can eradicate it. But I always ask the question, are we serious? And if we are, what can we do? Now, I would like you to believe this is the most important slide in this presentation. Make no doubt about it. Gender-based violence is not about sex. Its central thesis is power and control. There's a pattern of behavior of a person in charge. There's no doubt who is wearing the pants here. They use power to create fear or threaten to do so by using that power. It's a do as I say so world or else, which is I put my foot on you physically or figuratively. It's all about domination. And it's a power relationship, as we will see as time goes on. It's the strong over the weak and the strong over the helpless. It's about control. Sex, in terms of sexual intercourse or some component of it, is the least thing on their mind. The second thing I want us to spend a little time talking about gender. Now, gender is very interesting. I like to go back to the beginning. What is the first question that one asks when a baby is born? Everyone wants to know, is it a boy or is it a girl? Is it a male or female? Now, this is an immutable biological fact. You're either a male biologically or female. Gender does not paint a picture of your biology. It paints a picture of who I want to be, or I want to become, or I want to be perceived by others or the society. So gender is a social construct. It's not a biological phenomenon. So you have to ask the question then, what makes me a man or what makes me a woman? So gender is a very complex mix. We move away from the biology, from what we call the binary. You either a man or a woman, one or the other. Gender is a mix. First, there's the physical gender, your biological sex, but that's your birth tool. That's for later consideration. Then it's concerned about your gender role. What does society expect of your gender? What is your role? What's the role in society you should take on, be it a man or be it a woman? And then there's your identity, your self-awareness, a person's perception of being masculine or feminine or both. And that does not necessarily correspond at all with your biological sex in terms of what you were born with biologically and physically. It's how you feel inside. And you might feel that you're a man or woman or both. And to the point where you might not like at all your external genitalia and you want to change it. It also involves your gender expression. How do you want to present yourself to others? Do you want to present yourself as looking male or female or both? And then it's about your recognition, how the world sees you, how you want the world to see you. And then finally, it includes your sexual orientation, who you're attracted to, the opposite sex, the same sex as you, or both. Now, when you put all these complex labels together, you realize that at any point in time, at different weeks, you might decide to be one or the other. It's very fluid. So when we look at it from this spectrum, what we're talking about, the biological sex, where the doctor assigns you at birth, whether you are male or female, or you can be both intersex. There's a very small portion of the population we used to call hermaphrodites. You want to say how you feel inside. Do you feel you're a man or woman? Again, you might decide you want to be either. You can change your sex. How you present yourself to others as a masculine, feminine, how the world sees you, and your sexual orientation. So when we look at gender from that point of view, we're no longer talking about that immutable biological fact of male or female. You now can decide whether you're more feminine in the society context, more masculine in the society context. So we're looking at being lesbian, gay, or both. And so when we look at the different labels you can put on, you move away from either or. We potentially have, depending on the classification, you can have 29 different levels. And you can decide at any one day or the other what you might decide that you want to be today. And so it's a very complex social construct, and it's very topical. And for those who are interested in, I'm telling you, it's a very interesting topic to get involved with. But the first point I want to make very clear, it is about domination. It is about whatever gender that you believe that you want to assign yourself today, that you are more dominant, you are in charge of the other gender, whatever that label is. So it is a power control phenomenon. And when we look at gender-based violence, well, as I always say, a duck is a duck is a duck. So there are quite a lot of terminologies: gender-based violence, domestic-based violence, intimate family violence, domestic abuse or family violence, abusive or controlling relationships, violence against women. So there are quite a spectrum of names that you can put together to label this whole issue. But gender-based violence is a much more encompassing one, as you will see as we go on. And then the third thing I want us to talk about, to understand, moving from gender, talking about power, I want us to look at this issue of violence. Well, medically, the definition of violence is very straightforward. It's behavior involving physical force intended to hurt, damage, or kill someone or something. So it's intentional force against someone. I'm sad to say that we live in a very violent society. Globally, but even more so in the Bahamas, things have changed. It's not the good old days anymore. Violence is very pervasive. Prior to the pandemic, you wouldn't believe it, but in our Princess Margaret Hospital, we're seeing about 60,000 patients a day. And of that, those patients visiting the Princess Margaret Hospital, at least a third of them are there for some degree of injuries or violence. It's sad to say that the data will show on average prior to the pandemic that every day someone comes to that emergency room who is either stabbed or shot. And it's a 90% likelihood that it's going to be a male. Now, of course, not only is likelihood that the person who has been injured is a male, but the perpetrator is also a male, whether it be by guns, whether it be by knife. And here is a very interesting photograph that was loaned to me by my good friend, Dr. Dwayne Sands. And this is a young male, and he is showing off his wounds because, you know, he survived, and he's very proud of that. So moving away from violence, where we're talking about male on male violence, our focus tonight, is on that violence of gender-based violence, where we more focus on violence against women. It's a global problem. At least one of every 3 women globally would admit to being assaulted physically, emotionally, or have died because of their gender. And because of their gender in the power struggle, they are perceived as the weaker person, and they are dominated by someone else. And usually that someone else, that perpetrator, is a spouse, their lover, or relative. And in some rare cases, it might be a stranger. 1 in 3. Put a face on those victims. This is the one that we see. We can see the bruises. This lovely young lady, this is a photograph that Dr. Patterson has given to me. It's a teenager who made the mistake of going to her prom with another fella who wasn't her boyfriend. It was too much for him. He had to show her who was in control. And unfortunately, she died from the violence inflicted on her. There are children, the ones who we feel are so innocent that at some point in time, so often in their lives, that their relatives, spouse usually, not spouse, relatives, someone in their family who would cause tremendous harm simply because they are the stronger ones. They are the ones in control. Newspaper story every day. Dr. Sandra Day Patterson just alluded to that very terrible incident that happened in the Bahamas a couple of months ago. And the data would show that some 116 cases of child abuse were reported to the government agencies in 2020. Now, one of the things we say in medicine very often is that this type of crime probably represents at most 10 to 15% of what's actually happening out there. So I can tell you, this is very prevalent. We tend to see, and we talked, I showed you the faces of those that had physical abuse, but that's only a part of gender-based violence. There's emotional abuse. And this is particularly what we see in our homes with regards to this is the one that men tend to be more afflicted with. You're good for nothing, pa. You're no good like your pa. You'll never amount to anything. Why am I sending you to school? Why are you so dumb? You know, who gonna watch you? You're only good for one thing. You were neglected, you abandoned, you left at home. Serious emotional abuse. And then there's the one which is, again, very prevalent in the Bahamas. There's economic abuse. And you are actually held as a financial hostage. Because if you were to leave him or her, who's going to pay the house mortgage? Who's going to pay the car mortgage? Who's going to pay the school fees? You can't leave because you are economically dependent. And so you have to stay there and take your blows, both physically and mentally. Now, I really want to put a showcase on this. I've listened to a couple of the radio shows. And that's why I want to emphasize that gender-based violence is not only about violence on women. It's also violence on men. This is one study that suggests very strongly that a man is severely assaulted by his wife or girlfriend every 14 seconds in the US. So yes, men are also on the faces of those who are abused. It's an untold story, unfortunately, because most men, as a part of being a man, you can't complain, you can't tell anyone. You go to the police, they laugh at you. And so it's the hidden secret. Yes, up to 40% of domestic-based violence is inflicted on men. So domestic-based violence is not only about women, but the truth of the matter is we have to appreciate that by and large, in most instances, is the women that are being affected. This is a lovely slide that I think tells the picture from a study by the World Health Organization. And they looked at the total amount of deaths in the world. And in 80% of those reported, they're the men who were killed. And only 20%. But if you look at intimate partner violence, the number switches. 64% who are killed are women. Okay? And 36% are men. So this is an intimate-based violence by someone in the family. You know, you talk about mercy killing and all those. But now when you look specifically at homicide because of the partner, the intimate partner, in 80% of the time, the woman is the one that is killed. So yes, while it occurs in men, we have an emphasis on women because in most instances, they are the weaker ones. They are the ones that are dominated. And our studies in the Bahamas, I really would really encourage you. We can pull this down online by Charles Hanna. And when he looked at, I should say, Dr. Hanna. He has earned his PhD from his studies and work, he's well respected. He looked at the number of murders in the Bahamas from 2005 to 2009. There were 349 murders. 88% of them were men who were murdered. Only 12% women. And for all practical purposes, 100% of the perpetrators were men. There's another face of gender-based violence we tend not to see, and that is the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community. Again, like men who are being abused, it's more hidden. It's more closeted. You don't tend to see it, but I think that you will record in the Bahamas that there are men who consider themselves to be in that community. There have been some very high-profile murders. So this is another group in our population that has a high level of gender-based violence. Make no doubt about it, gender-based violence is costly. Costly with regards to the demands on our police force, people who are in prison and hospital, premature deaths, family disruption. And then, of course, you got, our daughters can't find husbands. This is a very important study I keep in my armamentarium. This is done by Dr. Lynn Barkley from the Kaplan University. And what she actually tried to put some financial value to the economic costs of gender-based violence in the United States. She estimated that it was about $8.3 billion a year, including $6.2 billion for physical assault, $461 million for stalking, $460 million for rape, $1.2 billion for lost lives. And CDC showed very clearly as well that domestic-based violence victims miss some 8 million days of paid work, the equivalent of 32,000 full-time jobs and approximately 5.6 million days of household productivity. So it's costly. If we're going to now approach this gender-based violence, and we particularly focus on violence, how do we go about determining where should we intervene and how should we intervene? I'm reminded of in the 60s and the 70s when trauma became an increasing problem in the medical arena. And we never looked at trauma as being a disease. We looked at trauma as being a symptom. People, because you were traumatized, okay? And so someone inflicted some trauma. But then they decided to look at trauma from a population point of view, to say, listen, there are certain places where it's more common. There's certain type of weapons that are used more often. There's certain populations where it occurs. We can actually have a profile of that community. So we have signs and symptoms when things are going on, where we can predict the trauma. And so we can know what kind of studies to design and what kind of programs and where to intervene. And so I think we need to look at disease in the same way. I mean, gender-based violence in the same way. It's not only a symptom, it has reached a proportion where we need to look at it as a disease. And so we can look and see where it's occurring. We can look and see the circumstances. We can look and see how we can diagnose this level of illness in a society so we can design the interventions in order to curb it. And so from that perspective, you know, we never thought terrorism was a disease until after 9/11. But we have so much violence in our society, we need to be able to look and see where is the violence, the epidemiological profile, who is getting it, when they're getting it, what time of day, and what are the underlying causes? What are weapons being used? Who is being targeted? Is it the gay and lesbian community? Is it our school children? Are they the kids that are left alone in the home? And so therefore, we need to know how to intervene. We must also look at the perpetrator. Who is inflicting the injury, and can we design specific programs for them? And we know that we can do that. And so when I look at it from my health perspective, through the eyes of a physician, then I say very clearly that gender-based violence is a major public health problem. And a major public health problem with regards to the violence and the pervasiveness in the society, that there are three components that lend to a problem being defined as a public health challenge. One is a high burden in our society, and we see it every level. In fact, I remember that someone making a quote, that you can almost trace any illness in our society from a psychological, physical perspective, that there's some component of a gender-based violence involved. So it's costly. So it's a high burden on society. But most importantly, it's preventable. We can find means, we can intervene, we can prevent it. And more importantly, finally, you have to be involved, because it can happen to you. It can happen to your family. It can happen to your children. We all have daughters. We all have sisters. And so I just want to end in the last few minutes. We got to find some reason as to why it is that we have gender-based violence. It's just some underlying cause. Well, very quickly, I think right to the center of gender-based violence is how we raise our boys. I think this sentence says it so nicely by Kevin Poppet. We live in a society where manhood is all about conquering and violence. And what we don't realize is that ultimately, that kind of manhood ultimately kills you. So we are born male or female. But if we are born male, when they see those male organs, it puts a process in place of socialization, whereby by the time we are teenagers and adults, we are shaped into what society has determined, what our culture has determined, what a man is supposed to be. And I like this act like a man. We put him in a box from the Oakland Bench Project. And in this box, because this is how we want to raise our boys. This is the behavior we want them to have. We model, this is the personality we want them to have. And in this box, we tell them, you got to be a tough man. You got to be aggressive. You got to be competitive. You have to take charge. And you got to know when to be angry, because there's honor in being angry, and how to yell and intimidate. You know, you have to have that style about you with your sexual prowess. You know, you got to know how to, you got to take the blows as a man. You mustn't have any pain. These, you know, so we tell you this is what a man is supposed to be. And then if you don't have these behavioral traits, if you so happen now to be softer, more nurturing, more caring, you know, you love your mother, you love your sisters, you like the way they communicate, you like the way they treat people. And if you take on that persona, then you are outside the box. You get verbal abuse. They tell you you're a girl, you're a sissy, you're mama's boy, you're a nerd, you're fag. Or you get physical abuse on the other end, where you're more likely to be bullied, teased, rejected, forced to play certain sport. You might even get sexual assault. And so we raise our boys in this man box, pretending to be a man, which they might not be. They might not be like that social construct that we want it to be. How to be strong when you really feel weak. How to be confident when you really feel insecure. How to be tough when you really hurting. Every day you're taught that men are superior, women are inferior, women are of less value, and they are just your property. They're just your sexual desire. And so what we really go through from the time they see our sex organ as a male, that we're in a boot camp over the next 15 years, telling us very clearly, this is the way you're supposed to be. But what happens to those men that are outside the box? They are actually contained in another box, a box of suppressed feelings, confused and angry and ashamed and alone and vulnerable. They feel revengeful, hopeless. What happens when they can't cope? And then when we graduate, okay, they give us a nice label, whether you are A student, B student, C student, D student. And so at the top, you're going to be a hegemonic, you are hard, you are Rambo, number one in the class. Well, if you're not more Rambo, but you're a little soft on the outside, you're almost there. So, we say you're soft. Now, beyond that, if you really got all of those feminine traits, we say that you're not even being what you're whip. And then at the bottom of the ladder, especially if you have the personality, you're fine. Now, so I want to suggest to you that underlying a lot of this study that Dr. David Allen put forward from 2005 to 2013, where you had 96 suicides, men were 7 times more likely to commit suicide than women, that we see a lot of that repression. And this is one of my favorite slides I created, where there's a connection between violence on man against man, violence against our women, and violence against ourselves. There's an underlying pathogenesis, this aggressive repression that we need to be able to identify, and we must be able to discuss it, and we must be able to find how can we reclaim our men. The other side of the other side of the coin is not only what is happening to the men, it's what's also happening to the women. Because there's a time whereby in the 50s and the 60s, where women came to the realization that they no longer had to be barefoot and pregnant and be subservient to men. And they decided that it was time to get out of this patriarchal world as they got their sexual freedom, as the pill came into being, that women's liberation, the feminist movement came into being. The feminist movement was not about domination. It was not about making it a patriarchal society. It was about equality, equal jobs, equal education, equal opportunities. And unfortunately, as the women as they bonded together, as they helped each other, we had this misconception, I want to suggest to you, that we felt all the men had power. No, it's only 10% of the men had power or less. Most men were marginalized. Most men were uneducated. Most men were being exploited as well. And so with the women now finding themselves, and those marginalized men even worse off now because they do not have the female support. So all I'm saying is that the women need to be there as well to help support the men. And so I feel at the end of the day, if you are not a part of the solution, you become a part of the problem. And it's my final slide, that as I say at the end of the day, that this pathogenesis of violence, this domination in our society, while it might have evolved from our patriarchal society, we must make sure that we don't move into a matriarchal society. And we must make sure that the women also be a part of realizing what it needs for us to be a part of that family unit. And I like this saying from the Baha'i faith, when it said, the world of humanity has two wings. One is woman and the other men. Should one wing remain weak, flight is impossible. And it's easier. It's better to build boys and men, and it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. It's easier for a couple to raise a healthy child. And so with that, I hope I stayed within my 25 minutes, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that I can. And what I can't, I will leave for Sandra to answer.
Thank you so much, Dr. Roberts. As always, enlightening, informative, interesting, provoking, and simply powerful. So I would now like to invite our audience, if you have any questions, if you want to put them in the chat, please do that. Or if you have a question, please let us know and we will try to answer those questions and direct it to Dr. Roberts. Do we have any questions at this time? Not all one time.
We have Camille Smith with a question, Marissa.
Okay, Camille, would you please ask your question and direct it to the panelists this evening?
Hello, Dr. Roberts. This is Camille Smith. I'm a counselor at the University of the Bahamas and a volunteer with the Crisis Center. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very informative and it covered a number of different aspects of gender-based violence. Thank you so much. I just wondered, Dr. Roberts, if you in particular had an opinion that you would be willing to share in this forum with regard to the possible impact that religion and churches in particular have on the prevalence of domestic violence and gender-based violence in our country and in the region.
I consider the church to be like a twin-edged sword. On one hand, it's being an enabler because the Bible is just full of the patriarchal stories. Men use it to their advantage.
Yes, sir.
They basically, they slay women in quoting that they have a right and that women must be subservient. They must obey their man. Okay, so the church, from that perspective, religion has been very cruel, and I think an enabler in gender-based violence. Having said that, on the other side of the coin, I think that religion also has the most supportive component, whereby it can really you can really preach that good side of religion that says that your wife is a part of you. How can you destroy yourself? So I think that that part of religion where, and I think in particular, when despite the violence of the that we see in some Muslim sects, for example, you know, there's some religion that really honor their women. They put their women up on the pedestal. You know, you're not supposed to touch a woman. You're not supposed to attack and hit a woman because they are the givers of life. And so I think for religion to take on that latter perspective, I think would be a fantastic program that can be used to intervene in gender-based violence. So I see it as that twin-edged sword.
I thank you very much for that response. I agree with you. I wonder if you have opportunity as a man to, or actually how much opportunity as a man you might have to bring this kind of talk to churches in the country and in the region.
I tell you, this is my ministry.
Yes, sir.
I go to churches all the time. I'm talking all the time. You know, this real man, this macho man that we have is killing us.
Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate that.
And you see, the problem we have in our society is that I'm a believer in Errol Miller's book on the when you look at men at risk, and we tend to think that men are all powerful. No, there are very few men that are powerful. Most men are followers, and most, you know, and they're exploited by the men of power. And so when they are in their little closets trying to find a place of refuge, yes, they have no place to turn. And so we've got to find a place where men can get together, where men can talk, where they are not afraid to speak and say, listen, I have that problem too. You know, you know, I have these feelings. How do I express them? And so it takes a while for a man to open up, to communicate, because we weren't taught to do that. That's not being a real man. And so I try to probe, I try to present in a way whereby I get them to second guess, and for them to say, boy, is this right? You know, what I'm doing is not a right thing at all. Maybe I need to check myself. You have to question yourself. And you have to challenge them. Men like challenges. And sometimes you got to challenge them, challenge them to dig into their souls, you know. But in our society, I don't know. It's going to take a long time, because there are certain things in our society which are just accepted as the way it is.
Yes, sir. Yeah. I especially appreciate the fact that you present the point of view that masculine and feminine qualities can be approached from a very fluid perspective, that we need to have both men and women who can understand that they have this wide range, you know, that we must understand that we can't stay in that box. So it's good to hear your talk and to hear your perspective.
Well, you see, I think that one of the things that women must do, women must be able to appreciate that there are some good qualities. Sometimes I like to talk about good qualities of being a man, of being masculine. And those are the qualities that we should bring out. You know, for example, I always give the example, when we declare war, the men, they are happy to go to war, to die, to protect their family. Men, see, the thing about it, we are not taught to express love. We can only express love, not emotionally, only materially. So we'll buy an expensive gift. We'll try to buy a car. We'll get a house. We don't know how to express love emotionally. We know how to express it. And so men love deeply. They love very deep. And so when you see they are hurt, they're violent. You know, and I think it's very important for women to appreciate that and to bring out that good, loving side of a man. And women can do that very well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Roberts and Ms. Camille. Thank you so much for your question and your answer. Are there any other questions? Dr. Roberts, I have observation, and of course, I believe it's a reality in my work as well with the Say No to Violence campaign. And I know some years ago, a survey was done at the University of Bahamas students, and there was some revelation that the young people, young girls, did not have a problem indicating that getting a little tap up now and then is a sign of love. And we still see that false information being expressed in certain environments. The fact that he's stalking them and roughing them up and following them up is a sign of love. And so I want you to, for this audience, what is that clear pathway or message we can give to ourselves? I'm going to say the next generation, but the clear demarcation that love and violence, are being used interchangeably. But how do we get our younger persons to understand not to accept it and that they are valuable and important in their own way?
Well, all I want to say is this. We need to redefine what it takes to be a man. We have to have champions. We have to have our models in society. And that's what we must put forward as what a man's supposed to be. Okay? And we also must condemn publicly what is unacceptable behavior. Okay? We can't applaud it. Okay? We can't be in a situation whereby you have one of the most, I was totally amazed in Jamaica where, and I guess it happens in the Bahamas too, but it was right in your face, that a woman really felt that when she was beaten by her man, that was a sign of love.
Yes.
I just couldn't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we need to be able to be more positive. We need, to some extent, we got to start marketing what it is to be good.
Yes.
We need to market what a good man is, what a good woman is. You know, at Christmas time, man, we have these Christmas stories, and they always show the good side. They always show that the good person always wins and the evil person always loses. We got to do more positive things. I mean, the only thing that sells, unfortunately, today is sex and violence. We got to change that in our society.
I do agree
you have
with
to
you.
take over for me. I must leave. Apologize.
Yes. Well, we want to say thank you. Are there any questions? Because we may just be able to wrap up now.
I leave it
We
for
just
Sandra.
have a comment and one question from Dr. Smith. Could I read those quickly?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So Dr. Smith says, more men need to hear your talk, Dr. Roberts. Thank you so very much. And his question, what are your thoughts about how to deal with mothers who encourage their sons to slap their wives now and then and have outside relationships? This is an underlying part of our culture that we do not talk about. Very briefly, did we lose him?
I think he had to leave. So Dr. Sandra Patterson, are you able to respond?
Yeah, that definitely is an issue that we have to address, the role that women play in continuing the violence against women. We have to look at how we raise our boys. And one of the things that we are hoping to do as a crisis center during this 40th anniversary is to have a symposium on masculinity and womanhood. And in both of those, we want to look at the role that mothers play. We always talk about the role of the absentee father, but we don't talk about the role that mothers play in giving messages, you know, that are unhelpful, sometimes toxic, sometimes poisonous, and in addition to the positive messages that they give. And the thing is, you have to look and see what we do with little boys. You know, I said, boy, oh, you're so good looking. When you get older, you're going to be a killer. the message, the unconscious messages that as women or as mothers, we give to our boys without realizing the implications of it. So hopefully we will get to put on these symposiums, and we'll look at these messages and how we can do to change the perceptions and the belief systems and attitudes towards.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patterson. Are there any other questions or comments in this chat at this moment as we're about to bring this session to a close? But we want to encourage you to follow the links, the public relations on these very important symposiums, workshops, webinars that will be taking place, and to spread the word throughout the community, to your church groups, to your children, wherever they may be. We have the beauty of Zoom that you can be anywhere in the world today, and you can participate from this segment today and empower yourselves and become advocates in the work that we say no to violence in all its forms. And so I would like to find out if not, I am going to invite Ms. Leela Green from the Crisis Center, a director, and also Zonchan, and one who works very hard, who's been in community, to give us a vote of thanks. Do we have one more question? If not, I would like to, I don't see any at this time, but I would like to invite Ms. Leela Green to please come and give us the closing comments and the vote of thanks for this evening's event.
Thank you, Marissa. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
we can hear you. We can hear you.
Me? Well, good night to everyone. I thought we had a very interesting discussion. There's so many, I think, points of view and points that Dr. Roberts raised. It's a pity that we don't have time to follow those up. I had a number of questions that I wanted to raise, but I thought it was a wonderful conversation and discussion. Also, Dr. Smith, the president of the university, I'd just like to thank him for allowing this to happen. I think it's a remarkable opportunity to speak to the students and to get the students involved. And I'd like to thank him for that. I'd like to thank Dr. Roberts for his presentation, and also to Dr. Sandra Dean Patterson. Dr. Patterson, you've worked a long time. You have all of us working with you, but I just like to commend you and thank you for thinking of this and working so hard to pull it off. And I would ask the university body to encourage the students to tune into our various presentations during the next couple months. I think it's going to be rich. I think it's going to be very interesting. And I hope that we have everybody involved. Thank you again, Marissa, for the wonderful job. You always do us proud. And I'm looking forward to you getting your students and getting the students to become involved in this month-long discussion. But thank you very much to all the persons who have helped us, the technical persons who put this off. I know Dr. Patterson was concerned about the Zoom and who's going to do the Zoom technology, but it went off very well. And I'd like to thank all the students and everyone from the university for their assistance. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Zonchan Leela. And I just want to say, if there's anyone even on this call who may be experiencing any form of violence, that you can call the Crisis Center hotline at 328-0922, 0922, 328-0922. And we know that many times persons who we think may not be experiencing violence, be it economical, the economic, financial, physical, whichever way, you have a right to live and no one has a right to handle you, mistreat you, or abuse you. And so we encourage you to reach out and get the help. We have Camille Smith and of course, so many other professionals on this call that if you need help at the university to reach out and get the counseling, the help that you need. And so we want to encourage you, do not suffer in silence. Let's kill this beast called violence and let's live in harmony and peace. I know that at our university that we want it to remain the #1 premier institution in this region. And of course, through such programs, initiatives, and the leadership of our president, a transformational leader, we know that we are going to make greater impact for all of our students, all of our stakeholders, and we are grateful for our participation in this very, very important conversation this evening. And so I would like to close by saying thank you all for your attendance and participation, and may God bless you. Let's keep each other safe. Let's be responsible for each other. If you know someone who's being abused or in an abusive relationship, speak to them and get the help for them. You may save their life. God bless you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you very much, Marissa. Good job.
Thank you. God bless you all.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Good night.
Good night.